is the Y'all Show. Hello to the All Southern program. And we're going to talk some barbecue with our barbecue barrister, Matt Heermans, in a handful of moments. But if you're feeling a little froggy, like I think Matt Heermans is feeling on this day, there's a reason for that. Well, actually, there might be two reasons. The TCU Horned Frogs have entered the top 25 of college baseball. We'll get Matt Heerman's take on that. And I think he's feeling froggy because he's got a little issue going on with his throat. You don't have that coronavirus, do you?
I don't think so. I'm feeling great. It's got a little bit of that itch in the throat. Maybe it's spring trying to sneak up and giving me allergies or something
I'm
like
sorry.
that.
You weren't out at the ballpark this weekend cheering on your favorite team, and that's what's caused that.
No, no. Typically, I would admit to that, but no, I'm just under the weather, as they say.
Yeah. Well, college baseball, unlike college football, I think there are some rabid fans now. A little bit different than football. I don't believe the sport of college baseball requires people to yell nonstop for 4 quarters. Maybe I know there's that famous chant of "throw it in the dirt" that's a little obnoxious. I think maybe cowbells are used at Mississippi State for baseball. Tell me, do they have other obnoxious traditions in baseball that I need to know about?
Well, you got the hecklers. There's some programs have their little group of hecklers that keep the mouthing at a high level throughout the entire game. With the hay batter and
Mm-hmm.
the pitcher. The different levels, I guess, of insulting remarks to kind of get the infield and get the pitcher off their game.
uh,
That's nothing. That's just baseball.
Okay, well, again, that's why we have the barrister of college baseball on with us, Matt Heermans, to help us understand a lot more about this sport. Well, we've wrapped up another week. It was week 3 this past weekend in college baseball, and I want to get your thoughts on what happened there. As I mentioned, TCU has entered the top 25 as the Horned Frogs out of Fort Worth. They check in at number 22. They're 10-1 thus far in college baseball for this new season and at 22 in the D1 baseball poll. Did you see this coming?
Well, I did. I figured this would happen if they had a good outing against this last weekend, and they ended up sweeping, going 3-0, beating Cal on Sunday. So yeah, I'm not terribly surprised. They didn't beat any wonderful top tier competition, but those aren't the clubs they beat over the weekend. Going 3-0, nothing to sneeze at for sure. And Cal is a respectable ball club, maybe not a tournament team, but a little early to say. So yeah, I'm not surprised TCU jumping in the top 25, and TCU is a team that Jim Schlossnagle, of course, the head coach for TCU, they're kind of a perennial top 25 baseball program. So not shocking them, but out there following college baseball.
Matt, your other thoughts from week 3 of college baseball? We saw some teams move up, some teams move out here this last weekend.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of different polls. Of course, baseball is interesting that way. Of course, you got football, it's the AP and coaches poll, and I think there's some other polls, Harris poll and things like that. But pretty much you're talking about the AP and coaches poll when you talk about college football, and in college baseball there are just a lot more. There's the Baseball America poll, there's Perfect Game poll, there's D1 baseball poll, which I think is pretty accurate. Those guys at D1 baseball do a pretty good job, but. Yeah, there have been some teams, and there's some teams I can think of one that are still hanging on in the top 25 that maybe shouldn't be there, and that's the. Well, we can come back to that, but yeah, overall a pretty good week of college baseball. You had the Shriners, Big 12, SEC kind of a showdown if you want to look at it that way. You had some games in Frisco. You had the Texas Tech Red Raiders going to play Florida Atlantic and Florida State University in Tallahassee. And so, yeah, you had some really great baseball this weekend across the South.
I know there was also, I don't know if you caught any of the scores from up in Minnesota, but 3 Tobacco Road schools went up there for a tournament in Minneapolis. I think it was NC State, Duke, and North Carolina. Did you happen to see any of the results from that?
I missed that. There was so much baseball to watch.
Yeah.
Excuse me, this weekend. Incredible amount of baseball to watch. So I was focused more on the two tournaments there in Texas and then in
Hmm.
Florida. But also I watched a little Miami. I watched Florida. Watched a little West Coast baseball when they played some of our southern teams there. UCLA Bruins, by the way. But no, I will have to catch back up with the ACC. I did see a little bit of South Carolina and Clemson getting together in their series, but
Clemson ended up winning that series.
correct.
I think they won the Friday game at Founders Park there in Columbia, home of the Gamecocks, and then Saturday's game was held at Segra Park, which is the home of the single A team, the Columbia Fireflies. And
Ah,
so two games held in Columbia, but not at the same stadium. And then the third game went up to the stadium in Clemson, South Carolina, and the Tigers won that rubber match there in the upstate of South Carolina to win that series. Again, Clemson has really dominated this baseball series over the last couple of years. And South Carolina baseball, let's be honest, has not been very good over the last 4 to 5 years. In fact, they fired Chad Holbrook, who had been a longtime assistant there for the athletic director now at South Carolina, Ray Tanner, and he comes in, his assistant, and does a fair job, but they didn't get a World Series appearance under Chad Holbrook, so they showed him the door, and they brought in a guy, I think, from South Florida to be the coach, and I don't think they even made the tournament last year, and they're not doing all that great here this year. The best highlight, by the way, did you see this last week? The best highlight for Gamecock baseball happened in a midweek game last week when a guy that they were facing off against hit a foul ball and it went over on the left hand side of the field. And there was a fella there in a pretty empty stadium there in Columbia, South Carolina, and that beer hit his gigantic glass of beer, and it went off like an atomic bomb. Now things aren't good if that's the best highlight we can come up with thus far for Gamecock baseball.
that's true. And boy, I feel bad for the guy. He got a full beer, and then man, that'll ruin your day. But no, South Carolina baseball certainly a rich tradition, very proud program. Has had a heck of a lot of success over the years, but down recently, and folks in Columbia not happy with losing to Clemson in anything,
Yeah.
much less baseball for sure. So,
And again, we're talking about the Gamecock baseball program, which won back to back national championships within the
uh-huh,
last dozen years or so.
correct.
And they can't even serve their wins up in Columbia SC when they have a team like Clemson coming in, which you'd think they'd be going all out for. Let's switch over from
Mm.
the Palmetto State and back to the state of Texas and kind of channeling a little Texas baseball, or rather Texas football, as in the Longhorns. Matt Heermans, I know you've heard the term DBU before.
I have, and there's got a couple different meanings, I guess,
Well,
for
in
sure.
in Longhorn world, DBU is Defensive Back University. People like Rod
Right.
Babers, who host one of our sister shows here, the Longhorn Blitz Show. DBU is,
Nathan Vasher, yeah,
yeah, you
exactly.
can go through the list a lot better than I can throughout the years, as the Longhorns claim to be the preeminent school out there for DBUs. I guess it's all the other positions the Horns haven't done quite so good at, and that's why they haven't won a championship in 15 years now. But to their credit, they've won, so not going to pick on Texas too much here. But in the state of Texas, in fact, I think there was a company making hats that had DBU on it to celebrate Texas's proud defensive strategy on the football field, and they got sued by the other DBU in the state of Texas, and that would be Dallas Baptist University. And I want to talk about this school, which a lot of people, let's be honest, have not heard of DBU.
Right.
They're a top 25 college baseball program. They've hosted regionals there in their portion of Dallas. What more can you tell us about this up and coming baseball program?
Well, for those folks around the Metroplex, as they call it, the Dallas Fort Worth area, Dallas Baptist is not. This is not a new name in college baseball. This is a program that has been uh, really, really good for a long time. Now, recently, say over the past decade or so, you've had regional appearances, you've had super regional appearances. Like you said, they've hosted there in essentially the south part of Dallas, along Loop 12. There is where Dallas Baptist is, and so yeah, it's one of these. One of the cool things about college baseball is that there are programs like this, and Dallas Baptist. I think they're in the. Oof, get me on the spot here. They're
Missouri Valley
Valley.
Conference.
Yeah, something like that. I want to say it's not a Power Five league by any means, but college baseball is such that, especially throughout the South, you got so many kids playing baseball that if you have a school like Dallas Baptist that has a kind of a recognized um, excellence there, you can recruit and you can play high level baseball. And Dallas Baptist does that, and they've done that for a long time. This is one of these kind of mighty mid majors in college baseball, and they're sitting at number 18. And the last time I saw, but they've played Texas Tech in regionals recently. They've played Florida. I mean, they've matched up really well with some of these programs as well. So yeah, tiny school, really small private school, but baseball is what they're known for. I think there's something along the lines of 1,800 students at that campus. But you don't need, you don't need it. You need a baseball stadium. You need success, and they've been able to do it. So a baseball powerhouse there in an unexpected place.
Yeah, you said on the south side. There are the South Siders there in the Metroplex.
That's right. Well,
Kind of,
they're exactly.
kind of channeling the other South Siders up in Chicago. We're talking with
Uh-huh.
Matt Heermans. This is our barrister of college baseball here on the Y'all Show. John Rawl, glad to have you aboard here as we have college baseball front and center on Tuesdays going forward for the rest of the excitement of college baseball. We'll get you to Omaha thanks to Matt Heermans. Matt, last week we told you that we would give it the little fellows of college baseball some love from time to time, the Dallas Baptist, if you will. And of course, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was just 3 or 4 years ago. Coastal Carolina, then in the Big South Conference, went out to Omaha and won the College World Series. So we look across the Southland with conferences like the Southern Conference. You also have the OVC. You have the American Conference, which doesn't necessarily have superpowers in college baseball, although I did see UCF has done pretty well in that conference here lately. And of course, I think they've got how does I think Houston has even done pretty good in
Uh-huh.
college baseball, right?
Houston has had some success, absolutely, and you talk about Rice as well. Certainly not.
They're out of the Conference USA ranks.
That's right. But if we're focusing on the non P5 guys, there's certainly one.
A, a,
There's a
a former national champion, Rice Owl.
that's
Too.
correct. Not after Mr. Graham retired at a with high honors there at Rice. They haven't been able to find that level of excellence, but really storied baseball program, and we got some quote unquote little guys hanging around the top 25 and in the top 25 now. For sure. You've already mentioned Dallas Baptist. Tulane is now sitting at 9-2, and they're 23. Now I know you're going to say Tulane, not always a little guy, particularly historically, but
They've won a national championship too in the last 20 years, right?
that's right. That's right. Another baseball program that has had a great deal of success over the years, for sure. So you're when you get to East Carolina too. We talked about people who moved in and dropped out. East Carolina's a program, I wouldn't say a little guy, not a Power Five league, but certainly a good sized school and a recognizable name. The Pirates there at East Carolina, they have had some baseball success and some tournament appearances over the last several years as well. So, cool thing about that is that college basketball and football, of course, to a large degree. You talk about big names. You talk about and a lot of times baseball has the same thing. You're a bigger program. You have higher level recruiting and bigger names. You play bigger teams. You have higher RPI, et cetera. But you got the little guys. You got the little teams that can sustain success, and that's very interesting. Particularly the Chanticleers, like you said, of Coastal Carolina, that just went on an absolute tear
Yeah.
a few years ago, winning the championship. Just an unprecedented level of offense there coming off the bats there for Coastal Carolina. So pretty cool. Pretty cool.
2016, the year for that.
Correct.
Coastal Carolina's magical run. Then again in the Big South Conference, which a lot of people don't even know what that conference is, and they have teams like Charleston Southern, and they've got teams like Gardner Webb. and that team there, Coastal Carolina, emerged from that. Coastal Carolina has since moved up in the ranks and even went to a power program for football. They're now in the Sun Belt Conference. You talked about East Carolina, the Pirates, this past weekend. They hosted a tournament there in Greenville, North Carolina. I know they had High Point participate in that tournament, and they even brought in a team from the SEC as Mississippi went all the way to Greenville to Pirate Country and ended up winning every single game in that tournament there. And those Rebel Sharks are on a tear. Mike Bianco, his team has done quite well out of the gate here in 2020.
They are on a tear. This is a team that was right on the edge of the top 25. One of these programs that you thought would have some talent for sure, but just could it come together? How was the offense? It's a very young offense. How's that going to work? You got transfers like Cale Baker, Kenny Powers, we've talked about before. Guys that are coming in from the JUCO ranks and figuring out how they're going to gel and come together. But they have just been they're sitting at I think 11-1 at this point, and they've gone from 25 to 9 in the rankings, and just a ton of momentum there for the Rebels, which is the opposite of their in-state rival there at Mississippi State. Hadn't gone quite that well for the state, the Bulldogs.
And what's going on in Starkville? I haven't caught up with what they did this last weekend.
Yeah, Mississippi State, of course, one of these programs in the SEC West, royalty, if you will, a very a storied program, great facilities, great baseball every year. They have started off ranked very high. They were ranked in the top 10, but they have struggled. Mississippi State is sitting at 18 now, and I would say, and I'm going by the D1 baseball poll. We can't go through all the polls. Of course, there's just too many of them. But they're sitting at 7-4. They went 2-3 this last weekend. I would say it's generous that they're sitting in the top 25 still. And look, I think Mississippi State, folks at Starkville, not time to panic for sure. I think you've got a good ball club. I think things will come around. But a tale of two programs there in the Magnolia State. You got one just barely hanging around the top 25, which is rocketing up the polls and dominating their opposition. You got Mississippi State starting off in the top 10 and kind of dropping, struggling. So baseball's a wild sport. Sometimes you don't play your best ball at the beginning. Sometimes you do. But yeah, tale of two programs there in Starkville and Oxford.
And I think in midweek action, a little birdie, told me that those Diamond Dogs in Stark Vegas lost to Alcorn State, I think.
Cool. Yeah, they did. They lost to Alcorn State, a team that'll really stick in the craw of the Bulldogs, team that Ole Miss had beaten the week before.
And then that team that plays at Swayze Field in midweek action, they were able to defeat the in-state foe Southern Miss last week. Now, one team we got to brag on. The bragging continues this week as we wrap up our D1Baseball.com looking at the poll. A team that's moving on up, just like that TV show from the 70s, Matt Heermans. The Tennessee Vols. The Vols took care of business against GW as George Washington went into Rocky Top last weekend. And get this, here are the results of that series that the Tennessee Vol baseball team had with George Washington. 7-1, the opener. The second game was a 7-3 victory. And then the last game of the three-game series, the Tennessee Vols won that one 10-0.
Tennessee, Rocky Top is rocking. Old Smoky is trading in the helmet for the batting gloves here at this point. So the interesting thing about Tennessee, this is a surprise team in a lot of ways. A lot of folks, we talked a little bit about them last week. A lot of folks thought the pitching was going to be good enough to maybe make some noise there in the SEC East. The East, it varies by year, but the East is usually the weaker division for baseball than the West in the SEC. And a lot of that has to do with South Carolina being down, but even generally, you're talking about programs like LSU, like Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, that are in the West that are just perennial powers. In the East, you've got Florida, and of course Vandy. But this year, there are four teams currently in the top 25 that are undefeated. You got Florida at 11-0. I got UCLA out on the West Coast at 11-0. You got North Carolina State at 11-0. ranked at number 8. And then you've got the Tennessee Volunteers at 12-0, going 5-0 this last week, sitting at number 20. Um, pretty close to uncharted territory for the we'll call them the Diamond Volunteers there. So, but they are on a roll. Like I say, they have a lot of quality wins. They have a quality win over Texas Tech, which is 11-1 and sitting in the top 5. So, a lot to be excited about there in Knoxville, and it's about to be springtime. So, perfect time to go out and watch a little ball at your with your 12-0 top 25 ranked Volunteers.
And UT, they've got the Big Orange, Wright State, the 3-game series this weekend. Next weekend, around, I guess it would be March 13th, is when Tennessee and virtually every other major conference team begins conference play, and the Vols begin their SEC schedule on the road at Founders Park against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Real quick, as we wrap up our baseball talk with Matt Heermans, the latest D1 baseball top 10. Florida's at number 1. Vanderbilt, the Vandy boys, come in at number 2. Dan McDonald's Louisville Cardinals are at number 3. The Georgia Bulldogs at number 4. Those Texas Tech Red Raiders check in at number 5 in D1 Baseball's poll. The undefeated UCLA Bruins are at number 6. The Miami Hurricanes, after getting blanked their first weekend, they've somehow managed to stay in the top 10. They're number 7 in the latest poll. Elliott Avents, undefeated NC State Wolfpack, as Matt Heermans told us, they're number 8. Mississippi's at number 9, and the Sun Devils of Arizona State check in on the D1 baseball poll at number 10 in this week's poll. And we've got more college baseball talk coming throughout the week. We'll talk a little baseball with Jonathan Leifheit from an ACC perspective on the Wednesday Y'all Show. Thursday, our SEC Spotlight will have all the SEC fun, including the matchups going on this weekend. We've got more with Matt Heermans coming our way after this timeout. Stay tuned. We're going to have him switch over. He's going to take off his baseball hat and going to put on that barbecue hat, as he'll be our barbecue barrister. And we've got some fun to talk about that when the Y'all Show continues with the barrister, Matt Heermans.